He almost didn't hear the first joke. The room was warm, bright, filled with familiar voices. Plates touched softly. Glasses clinked. Someone told a story from work. An ordinary family dinner. He sat at the end of the table, as he always did. Not assigned. Just gradually inherited. A little farther from the center. A little easier to fade into. He reached for the salt. His hand moved slower than he meant it to. His son smiled. "Careful, Dad, we don't want you pulling a muscle." Soft laughter followed. Light. Harmless. He smiled too. Of course he did. That's what you do when everyone else is laughing. You make it easier for them. Someone added. "Next time we'll get him the lightweight shaker." More laughter. Still playful. Still affectionate. He kept smiling. But something inside him paused. Not hurt. Not anger. Awareness. He noticed how quickly they looked at each other after the joke. How natural it felt. How familiar. Families tease, he knew that. He had teased his own father once. But this felt different. Subtle, but different. No one had asked him anything yet. Not about his week. Not about the appointment he mentioned last Sunday. Not about how he was feeling. The laughter came first. And he joined it. Because it was easier. He straightened slightly in his chair. Adjusted his posture. Tried to look less fragile. Across the table, his granddaughter giggled again. Not cruelly. Children follow the room. And the room had decided something tonight. He lifted his glass. Took a slow sip. Let the conversation flow past him. Still smiling. Still calm. Still seated at the table. But quietly. Very quietly. He began to wonder. Were they laughing with him? Or at him? Dinner moved on. Work stories. Traffic complaints. News headlines. He nodded when expected. Added a word or two. "So Dad, did you fix that phone?" his daughter asked. "I updated it. It's fine now." His son smiled. "That's what you said last time." Soft laughter. Not cruel. Just easy. He felt that small tightening again. They loved him, he knew that. But humor can carry a thin edge. "Grandpa still writes things on paper," his granddaughter said. The table warmed at that. Charming. Old-fashioned. "Yes," he said. "I like paper. Next he'll buy a typewriter." More laughter. He lowered his eyes to his plate. His hands were steady. Steadier than they thought. He considered answering sharply. Quickly. But silence felt safer. He remembered teaching his son to ride a bike. Running beside him for blocks. Back then he wasn't the joke. He was the solution. The moment passed for them. It didn't pass for him. They saw him differently now. Fragile. Outdated. He straightened slightly. Still here. Still capable. And quietly he wondered. When did I become the punchline? instead of the voice? After dinner, they moved to the living room. Television light replaced conversation. He carried his plate to the sink. "Dad, you don't have to. I can manage." He chose the armchair near the lamp. Close, but not inside the circle. The talk shifted to finances, investments, planning, being prepared. Prepared. He had worked 43 years without missing a week. "Sometimes steady is better than clever," he said. Polite nods. "But things are different now, Dad." Different. The word lingered. Different meant behind. He could explain recessions they never lived through. But he knew the pattern. Smile. Nod. Move on. So he stayed quiet. The lamp hummed softly. He looked at his hands. Thinner skin. Strength still there. "Dad, you okay?" "Yes. Just thinking." They returned to the screen. His thoughts did not. When did listening become my only role? The evening stretched thinner. Blue light on their faces. His son muted the TV. "Dad, about next year." "Next year. We might need to make some changes." His daughter added softly. "Just thinking ahead." "What kind of changes?" he asked. "The house is getting harder to manage." "Harder?" "We worry," she said. "It might be easier if you moved closer." Closer. He knew what that meant. Smaller. Safer. Watched. "I'm managing," he said calmly. "It's better not to wait until something happens." Until something happens. A fall. A mistake. Proof. They spoke as if decline were guaranteed. He looked at them carefully. "Do you still see me? Or only what I might become?" "I'll think about it," he said. Polite words. Inside, something firmer stood up. "I am still here." The television resumed. Topic closed. He leaned back. Not invisible. Displaced. "If I do not speak now, when will I ever be heard?" The house felt quieter the next morning. Not empty. Just observant. He woke with a lingering thought from the night before. The laughter. The subtle tone. The way words can sound light, but land heavy. He moved slowly into the kitchen. Poured his coffee. Stood by the window. Letting the warmth settle into his hands. He replayed the moment again. Not to build resentment, but to understand it. They weren't mocking him. Not intentionally. But something had shifted. He was no longer the authority at the table. He was the elder. Handled gently. Spoken around carefully. Protected in small, unnecessary ways. He took a slow breath. There is a difference between care and reduction. And he could feel it clearly. He remembered teaching his son to drive. Calm voice. Firm instructions. Hands steady on the dashboard. He had never doubted his role then. But now, he sensed hesitation in their eyes. As if they were waiting for him to falter. Waiting for proof of fragility. He set the cup down carefully. The ceramic sound soft against the counter. "I am not fragile," he said quietly. Not angrily. Not defensively. Just truthfully. The sentence felt grounding. He didn't need to argue at dinner. He didn't need to correct every joke. But he did need something else. Clarity. Not for them. For himself. He walked into the living room. Sat in his chair. Back straight. Hands resting lightly on the armrests. He would not grow louder. He would grow steadier. And steadiness, when consistent, changes how a room behaves. Later that afternoon, his daughter called. Her voice light. Careful. "Dad. We were just worried about you last night," she said. He listened without interrupting. Without defending. "I'm fine," he replied calmly. "I know you are," she answered quickly. Too quickly. The pause that followed said more than her words. Worry can be love. But it can also be assumption. And assumption quietly shifts balance. He didn't accuse her. Didn't explain in detail. Instead, he asked a simple question. "Do I seem incapable to you?" Silence. Then, "No, not incapable." The hesitation confirmed what she didn't mean to say. He nodded to himself. Not angry. Just aware. "I appreciate your concern," he continued. "But I still make my own decisions." His tone was steady. Measured. No edge. No pride. Just clarity. There was relief in her exhale. As if she had been unsure how he would react. "I know, Dad," she said softly. "We just don't want you to feel alone." He smiled faintly. Alone was not the issue. Being overlooked was. And those are not the same thing. After the call ended, he sat quietly. Not wounded. Not triumphant. Just grounded. He hadn't raised his voice. Hadn't defended his age. He had simply stated a boundary. And boundaries, when calm, do not divide. They define. That evening, he stepped outside for air. Not because he was upset. Just because he needed space to think. The sky was turning a muted orange. Clouds drifting slowly. Unconcerned with human tension. He leaned lightly on the porch railing. Remembering a time when decisions were simple. When his children looked at him for answers. Not corrections. Not confirmations. Just answers. He didn't miss authority. He missed trust. There's a difference. Authority demands attention. Trust invites it. A neighbor waved from across the street. He waved back. Small exchanges like that felt honest. No adjustment in tone. No careful wording. Just normal interaction. And he realized something quietly. Maybe the shift wasn't about age alone. Maybe it was about how silence gets interpreted. When he stayed quiet at dinner, they assumed weakness. When he didn't argue, they assumed surrender. But silence is not surrender. Not always. Sometimes it is observation. Sometimes it is patience. Sometimes it is strength choosing not to compete. He straightened slightly. Not in defiance, but in awareness. If they mistook his calm for fragility, then perhaps he had allowed the misunderstanding to linger too long. Not by fault, but by habit. He had always avoided conflict. But clarity is not conflict. And tomorrow, he would speak just enough. Not loudly. Not sharply. Just clearly enough to remind them. He was still here. The next evening, he didn't plan a speech. He didn't rehearse anything. He simply decided not to disappear. Dinner was quieter this time. Fewer jokes. Less noise. But the same familiar rhythm. Halfway through the meal, his son reached for his plate. "Dad, let me carry that." He lifted a hand gently. "It's all right," he said. Calm. Not defensive. "I've got it." It wasn't the words. It was the tone. Steady. Certain. His son paused. Then nodded. "Okay." Small moment. But it shifted something. Later, when conversation turned toward weekend plans, his daughter began outlining ideas for him. Doctor visits. Grocery deliveries. Schedules. He listened. Then leaned forward slightly. "I appreciate the help," he said. "But I'd like to handle some of that myself." No accusation. No sharpness. Just truth. The table grew quiet for a second. Not tense. Just adjusting. His granddaughter looked at him curiously, as if seeing something new. Or maybe something remembered. His son spoke carefully. "We just don't want you overdoing it." He smiled faintly. "I know. And I won't." There it was. Balance. Not rejection of care. Not rejection of love. Just a reminder. He was still capable of choosing his pace. His limits. His life. By the end of dinner, nothing dramatic had happened. But something subtle had realigned. The jokes felt lighter. The tone more even. And when he stood up to clear his plate, no one rushed to stop him. Not because they didn't care, but because they finally understood. Care does not mean control. And strength does not always need to shout. A few days later, he noticed something different. No one hovered when he stood up. No one corrected the way he carried things. It wasn't dramatic. Just quieter. More balanced. Respect returning in small, almost invisible ways. That morning, he decided to fix the loose hinge on the hallway cabinet. It had been squeaking for weeks. A small sound, but persistent. He brought out his toolbox, laid it open on the floor, sat carefully beside it. The metal tools felt familiar in his hands. Solid. Reliable. He tightened the screws slowly, adjusted the alignment, tested the door once, twice. Silence. The hinge no longer complained. He felt a small satisfaction. Not pride. Not defiance. Just competence. A reminder to himself more than anyone else. He wiped his hands on a cloth. Stood up steadily. And at that moment, his son walked in. Saw the open toolbox. The fixed hinge. "Oh. You got it working," he said. No surprise in his tone. Just acknowledgement. "Yeah," he replied simply. "It just needed tightening." His son nodded. "That's good." And moved on. No lecture. "No, you should have called me." Just acceptance. He stood there for a second, letting that sink in. It wasn't about the hinge. It was about space. The space to act without interference. The space to be capable without proving it. And for the first time in a while, that space felt real. That afternoon, he went for a walk. Not far. Just around the block. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of rain. He moved at a steady pace. Not fast. Not slow. Just his own rhythm. 4 months. He had felt watched during simple things. As if every step needed supervision. But today, no one followed. No one checked. He walked because he wanted to. Halfway down the street, he passed an old bench near the corner tree. He had sat there years ago, waiting while his children rode their bikes. Back then, he had been the one observing, making sure they didn't fall. Strange how roles shift quietly, without announcement, without ceremony. He sat for a moment, hands resting on his knees, listening to distant traffic, birds settling in the branches above. He didn't feel fragile. He didn't feel overlooked. He felt present. And that presence felt earned. Not granted. Not borrowed. Earned. When he returned home, his daughter was in the kitchen. She glanced up. "How was your walk?" "Good," he said. Simple. True. She smiled. "That's good." No warning. No caution about sidewalks. No suggestion that he take someone next time. Just conversation. Ordinary. Balanced. He poured himself a glass of water. Stood beside her for a moment. And realized something gently. Respect wasn't restored in one big moment. It came back in small exchanges. When he carried himself with quiet certainty, others adjusted. Not because he demanded it, but because he embodied it. And embodiment, when consistent, is hard to ignore. That evening, they sat together in the living room. Television playing softly in the background. No one really watching it. Just sharing space. His granddaughter sat on the floor, scrolling through her phone. His son leaned back on the couch, tired from work. Ordinary quiet. Comfortable. Not tense. At one point, a news segment mentioned rising utility costs. His son sighed. "They keep changing the billing structure. It's confusing." He hesitated for a second, then spoke. They did something similar years ago, he said. Calmly. Back in the early 90s. Same complaints. His son turned slightly. Listening. Yeah. He nodded. They adjusted it after public pushback. Took a few months. No exaggeration. No lecture. Just experience offered plainly. His son considered that. That's interesting. I didn't know that. He shrugged lightly. There's not much new under the surface. A faint smile passed between them. Not competitive. Not corrective. Just connection. Built on shared thought. The room felt different after that. Subtle. But real. He wasn't being handled. He was being included. And inclusion carries a quiet dignity. It says, your perspective still matters. Your memory still has value. Later, as they stood to head toward their rooms, his granddaughter paused beside him. Grandpa. You remember a lot, she said softly. He smiled. Only the things that mattered. She smiled back. And for a moment, he saw recognition in her eyes. Not of age, but of depth. And that recognition settled warmly in his chest. Like a light that no longer flickered. Later that night, he sat alone again. But it felt different now. Not isolated. Not dismissed. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that restores instead of drains. He looked around the room slowly. The worn edges of the coffee table. The lamp casting steady light. The faint reflection in the window. For a long time, he had mistaken stillness for shrinking. Had wondered if stepping back meant fading out. But tonight, he understood something clearly. Presence does not require volume. It requires steadiness. Earlier in life, he filled rooms with instruction, with direction, with certainty. Now, he filled them with calm. And calm has its own gravity. He leaned back in his chair, hands resting comfortably. No tension in his shoulders. He wasn't fighting for space anymore. He was occupying it naturally. There is a difference. One exhausts you. The other strengthens you. He thought back to that dinner night. The laughter. The subtle sting. If that moment hadn't happened, he might never have noticed the quiet shift that followed. Sometimes discomfort reveals imbalance. And imbalance invites correction. He didn't resent them. They hadn't meant harm. They had simply reacted to time passing. To roles changing. To fear of losing him. And fear often disguises itself as overprotection. He understood that now. And understanding softened everything. He turned off the television. The room settling into silence. Not heavy. Not tense. Just peaceful. He rose slowly. Steady on his feet. Walked toward the hallway. And felt something solid within him. Not pride. Not defiance. Just alignment. He had not become louder. He had become clearer. And clarity, when lived quietly, reshapes a home. The next weekend, they gathered again. Same dining table. Same familiar dishes. But the atmosphere carried something steadier. Less correction. Less interruption. More listening. He noticed it immediately. Not because it was announced, but because it felt balanced. Midway through the meal, his granddaughter mentioned applying for a new internship. She sounded unsure. "They want leadership experience," she said. "I don't know if I'm ready." The table fell quiet. His son began to speak. Then stopped. And glanced toward him. Not out of habit, but intention. He met her eyes gently. "Leadership isn't about being the loudest," he said. "It's about staying calm when others aren't." She listened closely. He continued. "You've always been steady. That matters more than you think. No long speech. No dramatic tone. Just honest guidance." She nodded slowly. "I never thought about it that way." His son added. "That's true. You are steady." The conversation flowed again. But this time, he wasn't on the edge of it. He was inside it. Later, as plates were cleared, his daughter handed him a dish towel. Not to take over, but to share the task. They worked side by side quietly. No hovering. No corrections. Just cooperation. Simple. Equal. And in that ordinary exchange, he felt something settle fully into place. Not authority restored. Not dominance reclaimed. Just respect returned. And respect, once balanced, feels light. That evening, after everyone had left, the house felt full instead of quiet. Not loud. Not chaotic. Just warm. He moved through the kitchen slowly, putting away the last of the dishes. He noticed something small. No one had insisted he sit down. No one had taken the towel from his hands. They had worked beside him, not around him. And that difference mattered. He dried the final plate, placed it carefully in the cabinet, closed the door without a sound, then stood still for a moment, letting the day settle. Respect hadn't returned because he demanded it. It returned because he carried himself differently. Less apologetic. Less withdrawn. More present. Earlier in life, he thought strength meant control. Now he understood. Strength can be calm continuity. Showing up the same way. Again and again. Without shrinking. Without pushing. Just steady. Just certain. He walked into the living room. Sat in his chair. The lamp casting a soft circle of light around him. He replayed the dinner conversation briefly. Not analyzing. Just noticing. They asked for his opinion. They waited for his response. They listened. No one rushed him. No one finished his sentences. That patience felt like quiet acknowledgement. He exhaled slowly. Not relief, but contentment. The shift wasn't dramatic. No one announced it. But the room had changed. Because he had changed first. Not in personality. Not in volume. But in posture. In presence. In quiet confidence. And when presence is steady, others adjust naturally. A few days later, his son stopped by unexpectedly. Not with concern. Not with instructions. Just a visit. They sat at the kitchen table. 2 cups of coffee between them. Steam rising slowly. His son looked thoughtful. "I've been thinking about what you said," he began. "About staying calm." He listened quietly, giving space. His son continued. "I get impatient sometimes. At work. At home. Maybe too quickly." He didn't rush to advise. Didn't turn it into a lesson. Instead, he asked gently, "What makes you impatient?" The question lingered. Honest. Open. His son leaned back. "Pressure, I guess. Wanting things handled fast." He nodded. "I used to feel that too." A pause. Then, "It fades. You realize speed doesn't solve everything." There was no superiority in his tone. Just shared experience. Offered evenly. His son studied him for a moment. "You don't seem rushed anymore." He smiled faintly. "I'm not." And that was true. He no longer felt the need to prove capability through urgency. Calm had become his anchor. Not his defense. They sat in silence for a while. Not awkward. Not strained. Just present. The kind of silence built on understanding. Before leaving, his son placed a hand briefly on his shoulder. "Thanks, Dad." Simple words. But sincere. And in that touch, there was no fragility implied. No careful pity. Just connection. Equal. Adult to adult. Man to man. And that balance stayed with him long after the door closed. That night, he stood by the window for a while. Streetlights glowing softly. The neighborhood quiet. He watched a car pass slowly. Headlights sliding across the walls. Then fading. For years, he had believed aging meant losing ground. Step by step. Roll by roll. But now, he saw it differently. It wasn't about losing ground. It was about changing terrain. Earlier in life, he led from the front. Making decisions. Carrying weight loudly. Now, he led from stillness. From example. From restraint. And restraint, he realized, requires strength. Not weakness. It takes strength not to interrupt. Not to correct every mistake. Not to compete with youth. But to stand steady beside it. He thought about the dinner weeks ago. The laughter. The subtle dismissal. If he had reacted sharply, raised his voice, demanded recognition, the house might have grown tense. Walls thicker. Conversations shorter. Instead, he chose calm clarity. Small statements. Firm posture. consistent presence. And slowly, the atmosphere shifted. Not forced. Not dramatic. Just natural adjustment. He turned from the window. The room dim but warm. He didn't feel invisible anymore. He felt rooted. And roots, though unseen, hold everything upright. The following Sunday, they gathered again. Same table. Same familiar rhythm. But something deeper had settled. Comfort. Not carefulness. During dinner, a disagreement surfaced. Small at first. About travel plans. Dates. Timing. Voices rose slightly. Not angry. Just tense. His son spoke firmly. His daughter responded quickly. The room tightened. He watched quietly. Not withdrawing. Not shrinking. Just observing. Then, when there was space, he spoke. Let's slow down. Not loud. Not commanding. But steady. The words landed. Because they were measured. Not reactive. They both paused. Looked toward him. He continued. You're both trying to solve the same problem. Just from different angles. A brief silence followed. Then softer tones returned. Discussion instead of defense. Listening instead of proving. He didn't add more. Didn't dominate the conversation. He simply redirected it. And that was enough. Later, as laughter returned, his granddaughter leaned toward him. You always calm things down, she said quietly. He smiled. It's easier when you don't rush. She nodded thoughtfully. And he realized. This was his place now. Not at the center of control. But at the center of steadiness. A quiet axis. Around which the room could rebalance itself. After dinner, they moved to the living room. Plates cleared. Tension dissolved. Soft conversation filling the space. His son sat across from him this time. Not distracted. Not checking his phone. Present. You know, his son said slowly. I think we forget sometimes. He stopped. Searching for the right words. He waited. Patient. No need to fill silence. That you've handled more than we have, his son finished. It wasn't dramatic. But it was honest. He nodded once. I've handled my share. No list of sacrifices. No reminder of past authority. Just acknowledgement. His daughter added gently. We don't mean to take over. We just worry. There it was. The truth beneath everything. Not disrespect. Not dismissal. But fear. Fear of losing him. Fear of time moving forward. He understood that deeply. I know, he said. And I appreciate it. But let me carry what I can. The words were calm. Clear. Not defensive. And they landed softly. His son exhaled. That's fair. Fair. Such a simple word. But heavy with balance. They sat there for a while. Not fixing anything. Not revisiting old moments. Just existing in a new understanding. And he felt something settle completely. He hadn't reclaimed authority. He had reclaimed alignment. And alignment does not need applause. It simply holds steady. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, he turned off the kitchen light. The house fell into gentle shadow. Quiet. But not empty. He walked slowly through the hallway. Past framed photographs. Moments frozen in different seasons of life. He paused in front of one. His children young. Standing close to him. Looking upward. Trusting. Back then, he carried everything loudly. Responsibility. Decisions. Direction. Now, they carried their own weight. And he no longer needed to prove he could carry his. That realization felt freeing. Not diminishing. Freedom at this stage of life, he understood, is not about stepping away. It's about standing without defense. He sat in his chair. Hands resting comfortably. No tightness in his chest. No replaying old conversations. No lingering sting. That dinner weeks ago. The laughter. The moment of feeling overlooked. It no longer felt sharp. It felt necessary. Like a turning point. Small. But precise. Sometimes, respect does not disappear. It just shifts out of focus. And someone must gently bring it back. Not with force. Not with anger. But with steady clarity. He closed his eyes for a moment. Breathing evenly. He had not demanded space. He had embodied it. And embodiment, when consistent, quietly reshapes everything around it. The next morning, sunlight filtered softly through the curtains. He woke without heaviness. Without the quiet frustration that had once lingered. There was no victory to celebrate. No apology demanded. Just balance restored. And balance feels quiet. Not loud. He made his coffee slowly. The familiar routine grounding him. The kettle warming. The spoon resting against the cup. Small sounds. Steady sounds. He carried the mug to the table. Sat down. And looked around the room. Nothing had changed physically. The same walls. The same furniture. The same framed memories. Yet everything felt different. Because he felt different. He no longer waited for validation. No longer searched faces for signs of being heard. He knew his presence had weight. And weight does not need to announce itself. It simply exists. Firm. Certain. Later that afternoon, his granddaughter called. Just to ask a question about her application. She listened carefully as he answered. Took notes. Thanked him. Not rushed. Not distracted. When the call ended, he didn't smile out of relief. He smiled out of recognition. This is how it should feel. Natural. Mutual. Respectful. He stood up from the table. straightened his shoulders, and walked toward the window. Not to check if anyone noticed him, but simply to enjoy the light. He had not grown louder. He had grown clearer. And clarity, when lived consistently, invites others to meet you where you stand. There is a quiet fear that comes with age. The fear of becoming background noise. Of being managed instead of consulted. Of being loved, but not fully heard. It does not happen loudly. It happens in small interruptions. In decisions made quickly. In sentences finished for you. And sometimes, it is not cruelty. It is worry. It is love mixed with fear. But even love, if unbalanced, can feel like erasure. What he discovered was simple and powerful. Respect does not always return through confrontation. Sometimes, it returns through posture, through tone, through steady presence. When he stopped shrinking, others stopped overlooking. When he spoke calmly, others listened longer. When he carried himself as capable, the room adjusted naturally. There was no grand speech, no dramatic correction, just consistency, just quiet clarity. And that was enough. Aging does not remove your place. It refines it. You may no longer lead with urgency, but you can lead with steadiness. You may not control the room, but you can anchor it. And an anchor, though rarely the loudest object in sight, is what keeps everything from drifting away. Sometimes, the most powerful words in a house are the ones spoken calmly and meant.